Here's Bane cutting free in front of Becky. He scores! Full count pitch for Ramirez. This one is swung on and lifted to deep left center field. Jones is chasing and that is gone.
To 74, and how about Edwards' nifty Euro step to the European?
Stopped in the backfield, breaks away, wiggles around Brandon Graham.
Luka! Oh, damn! How did he do it? How did he do it? That is Luka magic!
Ever since the NBA season was suspended due to the pandemic, we are all left lost without our sports, and we all wonder when things will go back to normal. The league and the media have been teeter-tottering on whether the NBA season will continue. The consensus amongst most people in the media, in the league, and even amongst NBA YouTubers is that if the season did continue, it would probably start in the playoffs rather than finishing in the regular season. And with these crazy circumstances of possibly not having fans in the stands if the playoffs should start again, it is creating a conversation on if there should be an asterisk to the season. I personally have faith that even without the fans present, we will still see some amazing basketball. ¿Qué pasó, mi gente? It's MarkTed25 otra vez, and should the league come back as planned, I have a feeling this is how the playoffs would turn out. Now, I understand that things could have turned out differently if the season was led to have been played out, but as it stands, this is the setup for the playoffs. Now, we need to understand that given the passage of time, most of these teams should have most of their players healthy and rested. There are some that do have some more extraneous circumstances, but I'll be sure to talk about them as we go. I will be splitting this into two videos. In this video, we will be talking about the Eastern Conference. First off, we have the first-seeded Milwaukee Bucks against the 8th-seeded Magic. As we can see from this season's matchups, the Bucks swept the season series against the Magic in pretty convincing fashion, especially considering the Bucks are top 10 in both offensive and defensive rating, where the Magic barely even scratched the top 10 in only defensive rating. Even though the Bucks have been on a losing streak, don't let it distract from the fact that this Bucks team has thoroughly beaten the Magic throughout the season. And while I do understand the playoffs can be a different animal, let's just be honest with ourselves. Giannis is the reigning MVP and was definitely on track to getting a set. As we can see from the stats from the players from both teams, it doesn't seem that the Magic would even have a shot of beating them or even getting a game off of them. If they somehow did, we could attribute it to rust and getting used to not having fans in the stands. We could also attribute it to having some players out, like Al-Farouq Aminu, who's out for the season with a torn meniscus. Evan Fournier and Jonathan Isaac should be back in time for this series since they mainly had sprains and bruises, but I still feel that this Magic team is completely overmatched by this Bucks team, so I will say the Bucks sweep this series. The Toronto Raptors and the Brooklyn Nets would have been an interesting matchup, but considering the Nets' two superstar players that were signed in the offseason are out for the rest of the season, even if things were normal, it's safe to say the Raptors would have the upper hand. They are second in defensive rating and have really surprised a lot of people this year, being 12th in offense, and in the last 10 games, they're 6-4 on a 4-game winning streak. The Nets have been okay. They have a recent 3-game winning streak and 5-5 in the last 10 games, but overall, their offensive rating is 107.8, which is 22nd in the league. The Nets have really struggled without Kyrie's presence, and the fact that he's just been in and out of the rotation has kind of not helped them in any way possible. And now that he's out for the season, it's definitely going to be hard on the Nets to really make anything happen. As we look at the players on both sides, again, I didn't put Kyrie's stats because he's not even going to play in this series. This Nets team is decent, but up against Siakam, who has really taken off this season, and other players like Lowry, Ibaka, Van Vliet, and other players in this team were fresh off a finals championship, it seems hard to question that the Raptors cannot win this series. The Nets might have a chance to get one game off of them, but it doesn't seem very likely. And as I said earlier, having your two superstars out really hurts. I will say, however, if KD and Kyrie were in, and this is very dependent on if KD was back to his peak form or not, I think they would have had a definite chance of beating the Raptors. But this isn't the case, so the Raptors will sweep this one. Up next, we have the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers, and I gotta say, this series could go either way, but I'm about to explain why I think the Celtics would move on over the 76ers. As we can see, the 76ers beat the Celtics in 3 out of the 4 times they played, but in the final time that they did play, the Celtics beat them pretty badly by a 21-point margin, and this wasn't with anybody being hurt. Embiid, Harris, and Horford didn't play up to standard in that game. The Celtics are also a top 10 team in both offensive and defensive rating, whereas the 76ers have struggled offensively, being only 18th. The 76ers have generally seemed to have underperformed throughout the season, but this is not to the fault of Joel Embiid, who has performed great this season. As the Boston Celtics are concerned, the trio of Tatum, Walker, and Brown have been dynamite this season. I also know that both teams were on a 5-5 streak as far as the last 10 games, which isn't horrible, but it's not great. And there's a great reason why the Celtics are the higher seed than the 76ers this season. As far as injuries go, Ben Simmons did have pinched nerve issues within his back, which it shouldn't be a big deal once he does come back, but you never know, because sometimes those pinched nerves are a real pain in the ass. He still plays in this series, but I feel the issues lie with Ben Simmons' game. And it's been mentioned in the media and all over YouTube, and that's his shooting, especially from three-point range. He has not improved on that since he's been in the league, and especially since it is a three-point centric league, he has to have that, otherwise he's a detriment. And the fact that he doesn't wish to take them is also disconcerting, and I think that's going to be a huge detriment to his teammates if he doesn't improve on that. But that would be a huge reason why the Sixers don't move past the Celtics. However, it's going to be a hard-fought battle because Sixers do have size on their end of things, and it should provide some problems to Kanter and other players on the Celtics, but ultimately I have the Celtics scraping by in 7 games. The Heat and the Pacers should be an interesting matchup since we have a pretty well-oiled machine in the Miami Heat who have really done well this season. As far as the season matchups, the Heat did beat the Pacers twice. However, since the season was suspended, there were 2 games that they didn't actually get to play. Judging off of the matchups, it seems that the Heat would have the upper hand, but considering their overall record, I think the Pacers would have at least gotten 1 game off of them. Even though they lost their previous game, they were trending in the right direction overall. As far as the players are concerned, Butler has been doing well, other than his horrible 3-point percentage. He is still the leading scorer, and his other teammates are no slouches either, with the roster being pretty deep from Kendrick Nunn to Tyler Hero. The Pacers are not a bad team, since they have Sabonis emerging as an all-star this season, and TJ Warren has been pretty good for them as well. It's also great to see that Oladipo's back in the rotation for the Pacers. However, the biggest blow could be Malcolm Brogdon, who's been doing great this season, but he was sidelined by a torn left hip, which sounds really bad. However, the reports say it's week to week, until who knows when. If he does come back, will this injury hinder him in any way? And another big blow to them would be Jeremy Lamb, who's also put up some decent minutes, but he's out for the season after landing really weird versus the Raptors. It's a very unfortunate time for this Pacers team to have so many injuries. However, I do think they're not going to go down quietly since they have Oladipo back, and Sabonis has been really great. They also still have Miles Turner and TJ Warren. At best, the Pacers would probably win 2 games on the Heat. So overall, the Heat still win this series, but they win it 4-2. Moving on to the second round, I will not put the players' stats since we can only speculate what they would have put up, but if you need a reference point, you can rewind to see the stats for yourself. So, in the second round, we have the Bucks versus the Heat, and this is where things get really spicy. The Heat have actually beaten the Bucks in both of their matchups that they played this season. It is a game where it was suspended, but who knows how that could have ended up. The Heat were beating them by pretty healthy margins. But let's just say the Bucks do get at least 1 win. After all, they're still far and wide the better team despite not winning the season series. I could see this series getting kind of tough for Giannis though. The Heat seem to know how to work against Giannis because there was one instance where Giannis was really struggling and they beat him by a heavy margin. But maybe Giannis will come to his own and Eric Bledsoe will not force things. I mean, and also they still have Chris Middleton, who's a really great secondary option and shooter. And Brook Lopez also can shoot pretty well, and he can space the floor a bit. And he is still a decent presence in the paint when he's on defense. As much problems as the Heat have given the Bucks this season, I don't think that they'll go the distance in this series. I think the Bucks will take this series in 6. And then on the other side of things, the Raptors and the Celtics are going to be an interesting series should it happen. The Celtics beat the Raptors twice, and again, the game was postponed due to the season suspension. I think the teams are pretty even though the Raptors rank lower in offensive rating. Both teams have experience getting to the conference finals, so I think it'll be very hard fought on both sides. This series could go either way, but I think the Raptors, being the defending champions, will continue to surprise people in this playoffs. I think they win the series 4-3. It's going to be a hard-fought battle, but I think the Raptors ultimately pull it off. Now, within the Eastern Conference Finals, we get to see the two teams that played last year. Will the Raptors take it again? It is possible considering that the Bucks were beaten twice by the Raptors during the season. One of those games was almost a blowout. However, in the game that the Bucks did win, the Raptors were also almost blown out. They were both 16-point leads. We will get to see the two highest rated defenses in the league, which should be a bloodbath, especially considering what happened last year. However, and I know Raptors fans are not going to be happy when I say this, I think this time they have no Kawhi Leonard to save them. They have been an amazing team this year and did make everyone look foolish for doubting them. But I don't think it's enough to beat Giannis this time, considering the tear he's been on personally throughout this entire season. It isn't going to be easy though, as the Bucks do come out on top in a 7-game series. So we see the Milwaukee Bucks becoming the Eastern Conference champions. As far as upsets, you could say the Sixers could beat the Celtics. I did say it could go either way. And another possibility could be the Raptors knocking off Giannis. However, considering that they don't have Kawhi Leonard, Giannis I think will overcome this time. And given what I've seen and given the stats that I have here, I think what I have here for my predictions is pretty fair and pretty well backed. In the next video, I'll go over who ultimately makes it out of the ever Wild West and who ultimately wins the coveted Larry O'Brien Trophy. That's it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Por favor, suscríbete a mi canal, ponte un like, toca la campana y hasta el próximo, mi gente. Adiós.